When rosining your bow for the very first time, you need to make sure to start with a tight bow. Have the bow tight enough that it's able to be played. And how you know this is find the middle point of your bow, and you're going to have about a pinky's width between the stick and the hair. If you don't want to use your pinky, you can use a pencil to check this, but you do want it to be roughly about that width apart. That'll give you a good amount of tension so that your bow makes a great sound on the string. The next thing is that you need to get your rosin. So cello and viola and violin rosin will look something like this. It might be a little bit of a different color or come in a different container, and that's fine, but it's usually kind of in a rectangular shape. Sometimes it's a circle. It varies a little bit. Base rosin looks very different. It looks typically like this and comes inside of a little container. Each container is usually a different color depending on the brand, but inside it should be roughly the same. So sometimes they're covered in a little foil, other times it's a waxy kind of paper, and this is extra sticky rosin. So it's really important that basses only use this, and that if you're a bass player, you make sure you have the correct rosin in your case. Every once in a while, music stores will accidentally give you the wrong rosin. They'll give you cello rosin, and that's not appropriate for your bow. So make sure that you have the correct bass specific rosin. All right, so now that you've got your rosin, your bow is tight, it's time to see if you even have rosin on here. Most often the brand new bows will not have any rosin on here because the bow hairs themselves are brand new, and horsehair doesn't naturally come with rosin. So to check to see if it has any rosin, take a dark piece of clothing like this shirt, and you're just going to touch the bow hairs to your shirt and see if it leaves a mark. And this one didn't leave any kind of a marking, which means that there's no rosin on here whatsoever. And if there is, it's not enough that it's going to make any sort of a good sound. So we need to apply rosin to this. So I'm going to take my rosin cake, and the first time often needs the most effort and strength. So I recommend having the hairs up towards the sky stick on your lap, or if you're at a table, kind of have it rest on a table, which I'm going to do. And that gives you just a little bit more strength onto your hairs, and it'll make it a little easier for you to rosin. The next times, once you rosin it, it won't need so much effort, and you can just do a really quick rosin up and down, and you're good to go. But this first one needs a little bit more muscle. So you're going to take your rosin, start at the frog, push down pretty significantly into the hair so you feel that it's really gripping on there. And you're just going to do these little motions up and down, just kind of inching away. And the first time, start only here until you start seeing there's a color change. Bow hairs are usually at kind of a creamy color, and once you start applying rosin, it'll start to turn more white. So give it a few strokes up and down for however long it takes to start seeing that color change. Once you start seeing that change, you're going to start inching your way up all the way, going from the frog to the absolute tip. Once you get finished going frog to tip, take the rosin and do a few quick little smooth overs. Sometimes rosin dust can accumulate in little clumps throughout, so that just kind of smooths it. Make sure you don't get any hiccups along the way when you're trying to play later. Just a little bit more. All right, now let's check to make sure that it's good. So I've only really rosined this bottom part, and I want to make sure I have just enough rosin that it's going to make a good sound, and I definitely don't want to over rosin. So I'm going to just dab it again. And it's a pretty faint line, so I'm probably going to want a little bit more. So that was just up here. Let me try a little bit lower and see if it's any thicker. Lower. Yes, okay, that's much better. So I have plenty of rosin right down here, and then this upper section here, I need to do a little bit more. So make sure you check it as you're rosining throughout. It just wipes off. But check it throughout your bow as you're rosining to make sure that it's even and we don't overdo it in one area and then have not enough in the next. So just check it every once in a while. And once you're done, I recommend doing a check of the frog, the middle point, and the tip, just to make sure that it's even throughout. You don't want super heavy rosin over here and not enough over here. That's typically what we see most often, and we want to make it nice and even. Now, once you have finished rosining, you're going to be able to play. But once you're playing, you're going to notice that some of this rosin is going to fall off your bow. It's going to go onto your instrument and it looks like a little bit of a white powder. And that's totally fine. That means your bow and your rosin, they're doing their job. But it's going to be very tempting to wipe it off with your hands. Please make sure you use a clean, dry cloth to wipe off your strings, clean them off. You should receive one with your instrument and your rosin, but in case you don't have a cloth, use anything that you can find at home, such as a piece of an old t-shirt. Make sure it's clean though. You could use a really soft washcloth, anything that you have at home that's clean and dry and very, very soft, just to kind of remove that dust. If it sticks on there for too long, it does get pretty impossible to take it off, and that can be a pretty extensive process that a music store would have to use some special cleaners to get that off. So let's kind of prevent that from happening and just make sure you wipe off those strings after every single time that you play. Now, if you've gone through this whole thing, you've tried really hard to get the rosin on there and it just doesn't seem to be sticking. Here's a trick on what you can do. You can take your rosin and you can take a key or you can take a scissors very carefully, the tip of a scissors. You can even use a paper clip and you're going to just scratch the surface like this one is scratched. Okay, and this person, they just kind of scratched it in a little bit of a zigzag pattern. They have a little couple few chips on there. Anything to just lightly scratch the surface, it'll give a little bit more tension, friction to the rosin and to the hair and make it a little bit more easy to stick to the bow here. So if it's not working, you've tried all those things, it's not leaving any residue, it's not doing anything, you can try and scratch it just a little bit and only the first time, and that should help to make it a little bit easier to try.